My name is Chris Goff, and I want to introduce myself on this training that we're going to have on wholesaling. And I do see that we have a lot of people that are new, which is awesome. So let me just tell you just a little bit about me. Like I was saying, I'm just a normal guy with a lot of passion, courage, like to have fun, work hard, spend time with the family, pretty much live my every day to its full potential. And I'm not Superman or gifted. I actually wasn't very good in school, and I surely wasn't fed with a silver spoon. I'm just the average Joe that believes in serving others and taking the knowledge that I've had over the last 18 years in the real estate investing business and being able to share that with you. Now, getting started, though, wasn't all that simple. You see, I grew up in Northern Virginia, where my dream job as a kid was to work on airplanes ever since I was 12 years old. So I went to school, got my degree, received my license to become an airplane technician, and I went to apply to several jobs, airline companies, charter companies, pretty much everybody I could think of, and nobody was hiring. You see, the airline industry was down, and I couldn't get a job at the one thing that I've always wanted to do, and that's when I decided I had some heavy thinking, and I decided to actually go into the Air Force, which was really awesome experience, and I became a crew chief working on a fighter bomber plane. And right after serving my country, I landed a job with United Airlines back at home. So here, finally, I've got my dream job it was just becoming a reality. And after about a year, I realized that although I wasn't really making enough money and I had bills to pay and I had big dreams, I just wanted to do more. And I just wanted things, and I knew at this pace I wouldn't be able to support my family. I'd be stuck working a job until I retired, collect a pension and Social Security. I then realized that although this was my dream job as a kid, it was not my dream salary as an adult. So I started to consider real estate investing, and I bought a How to Get Rich in Real Estate program by Carlton Sheets. Now, some of you may remember this program, and I began studying, went through the whole program, and I was totally confused. I was even more confused going through this program than when I started, but I didn't give up. I decided to quit my job, and my mom freaked out. Here I had a great job, benefits, the whole 9 yards, and I'm quitting to do something I haven't really been successful at. Even my friends were telling me that I was crazy. This only drove my passion to work for me. So I lease optioned my condo. Of course, I messed up the contract, packed a U-Haul, and drove to Bryan College Station. And I found out you could actually buy houses there for $40,000, which sounded like to me to be, man, this is so much easier to get started in this business. I did start mowing yards part-time just to pay the basic bills, and it took about 3 months before I completed my first wholesale deal, and I made $4,000. I remember that day very clearly. I was just looking at that check, and for something, just a spark just totally changed my whole perspective of this business. Very first year, I did 46 deals, and I was still learning, though, and I had a lot of things to learn, and I kept messing up things. But I always told myself that, hey, every time something goes wrong, it was a learning lesson for me to make me better. And I really, truly believe that today. Of every small mistake or, looking back at all the things that went wrong, were actually learning lessons to help me move forward. Since then, I've completed over 500 deals, anywhere from flipping contracts to lease options to seller financing, working with people in pre-foreclosure to rehabbing single-family and commercial properties. And with all my success, obviously the School of Hard Knocks, I was very fortunate to become a 2-time best-selling author and been seen on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox affiliates across the country. I'm also the co-founder of the REI Pro Investor Software, which many of you are already using, and we're going to be actually using the software in this 3-part series on wholesaling. So if you're not an REI Pro subscriber, you can sign up for free, 30-day free trial there. As you can see, myreipro.com. And the reason why I want to really do this training, this 3-part, is to share with you not only how to get started the right way with wholesaling, but how to avoid the pitfalls that I had and it just give you some real life experiences so you could go out there and impact others, make a good living along the way, just like a couple of these guys here, Samuel and Joshua, getting out there wholesaling. Samuel here did $11,000 on his first deal, just going through the software and walking him through these 10 executable steps, which we're going to be covering in this 3-part series. And then you have Joshua there, very first deal, and he made $6,500 on a wholesale deal, which is pretty awesome. I think when you know, the tool and the education, combine those two together, and you're going to be on your way to a successful career in this, no matter if it starts off quickly or if you just hit a home run right from the beginning. This is something that is a business that has totally changed the way that I look at things and the way that I have done business for years and never realized what I was doing until I started helping other people. And so anyways, I'm going to share all that knowledge with you guys, and we're going to get started. So now I want you guys to think, if you're just a beginner, you're just getting started, this is such a great business to get started with. I think this is one of the easier strategies to learn. It doesn't require money or credit because you're not actually buying properties. You're simply putting a good deal under contract and then assigning that contract to the new investor or landlord that wants to buy it. So with this arrangement, you would receive a fee for finding the property, also called an assignment fee. So you may be asking yourself, well, you know, why don't other investors, or why would other investors pay you to do this? Well, you got to think about it. There's a lot of doctors, lawyers, accountants, people that have full-time jobs. They're looking to buy real estate, but they don't have the time going through the neighborhoods and talking with people to package these deals together. And that's where a wholesaler, if you think of any business, there's usually a wholesaler and a retailer. So this is where you're going to come into the picture. This is where I started, and it's an awesome business. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we're following the proper steps, because although it may be a great strategy for beginners to get into, that's what everyone would be getting into. So I want to give you some tips through this 3-part series, really give you the confidence and the education that you're really just not going to find out there from a YouTube or a seminar, anything out there. I'm going to really package this information very well for you guys. All right, so let's get started. What we want to talk about in part 1 is, number 1, finding the deals. That's going to be the key. No matter what strategy you work, finding the deals is always the key to this business. So we're going to talk about just a few things and few strategies to find these particular deals. It's going to take some of effort on your part, but also knowledge of knowing where to go and what are we actually looking for. Well, they're going to talk about how do we talk to the owner, how do we find the owner, how do we communicate, what questions do we ask, how do we even know if this is a good deal. I'm going to teach you how we walk through what I call step 2 in our software and really analyze the situation. And then we're going to talk about step 3 of how to determine repair costs. And I don't want you to think that you have to be some certified inspector. Trust me, I had no idea what things cost. I actually, when I first got started, I went down to Home Depot and I started pricing out things. And I said, okay, how much does a bathroom cost? You know, there's a tub, there's a vanity. And I just started putting a bunch of numbers together. So when I walked through the property, it really helped me understand it was never going to be exact. The number didn't need to be exact because the way that we do offers, we leave some buffer, which when we get to step 4 in part 2 on how to make the offer, you're going to see how we actually calculate it. All right, so I want to really start off in a different way, and that is really understanding that there are only 5 real estate strategies out there. And I see so many people, they say, oh, there's a sub 2. No, a sub 2 is a paragraph in the seller finance, which would be a wraparound contract. It's not actually a strategy. Or I'm working the probate, that strategy. It's not actually a strategy. wholesaling assignments is actually one of the strategies that you work. There's actually a method to it, just as much as if retailing, the buy low, sell high. Seller financing, one of the more profitable strategies. Lease options to what I call a straight option. And I want to give you just a short little test here and just say, let me ask you, if you bought a property for investment purposes, how could you make money after you bought it? What could you do with the property after you bought it? Well, a lot of people would say you could rent the property out, which is true. You could sell the property. You could lease option the property. You could seller finance the property. And the question is, what else could you do besides living in it or burning it down? See, there isn't anything else you can do with it. All real estate strategies are really going to be within this. So you could rent it out, which is a long-term piece. A lot of people do rentals. I don't personally do a lot of rentals. I just see more opportunities in other places to make more money. You could sell the property. I could buy it low, fix it up, sell it. I could sell it as is. And that's where a lot of your rehabbing and your TV shows really started to take off. You could lease option it, which is one of my favorite strategies, and that's more controlling real estate versus owning it. And then you could also seller finance. And now there's 30 ways to seller finance a property. Now, most seller finance transactions are going to be one way, but there are a lot of creative ways that you could seller finance a property. But at the end of the day, I want you to focus on these 5 strategies because that's it. So let's get into wholesaling, and those that are just getting started, really, what is wholesaling? I like to define it this way. It's the business of locating properties, usually they need repairs, at bargain prices, and quickly passing them to investors or landlords at prices well below market. So unless you have a lot of cash, credit, partners, you really can't buy a lot of great deals. And that was me when I got started. I didn't have any money. I had good credit, but I didn't have any money. So the best alternative is to tie the property up with a contract. So I'm going to act as though that I'm buying it, and then I'm going to go look for a new buyer, which is typically an investor, to give me more money than what we've agreed to pay the seller, and that difference would be your profit. When I found out this 18 years ago that you could actually do this, I mean, I was hooked. Let's go, let's run. Now where am I going? And that's where we're going to get into step 1 here in just a minute. So you're actually assigning or selling the contract. There's a couple of ways that we can actually do this, and for some of you guys that live in specific states, we're going to have to close it a very specific way so you don't appear or come across as acting as a realtor. Okay, so when we get to step 4, making an offer to putting it under contract, and then we get into part 3 of how we close these transactions, we're going to talk a little bit about those things that you're going to need to be aware of. So you look at the house. This is actually a house we did. This was like my 5th house that I ever did. So you see the wholesaling where we drove by the property, it's trashed, it was sitting vacant, and we actually sold it to an investor. In the right picture, you can see that's the retailing side. So we sold it to an investor that wanted to buy it, fix it up, and resell it to a qualified buyer. And then again, there would be a nice big profit center on the retailing. But at the same time, you also have the risk because you have to buy it. It's going to go in your name or your company name. You have to do the repairs. You have to be responsible if somebody vandalizes the property, if somebody gets hurt on the property. So there is risk when you get into the retailing, but also there's also a bigger reward. So wholesaling is a great way for you to just quickly get in, quickly get out. And that's why you could do so many of these, and that's how I was able to do so many in a very short period of time. And although it took 3 months to do my first one, doing 46 that first year, you could do a lot of them. So that's a great visual for you guys to see. Generally, they're distressed properties. We're going to put them under contract to buy. We're then selling the paperwork, the contract. We're not selling the house. We're selling or signing over that interest to somebody else for a fee. Before I even want to go any further, I could tell you I'm probably one of the only people on the planet that actually teaches this, and I'm like shocked why people don't actually know this. Because if you start thinking this way, it's going to be easy for you to identify the differences in strategies, or why would you do wholesaling here versus maybe seller financing, or why would you lease option it and not wholesale it? There are three ways that we could buy a house, and this is the way that I look at it. You can either buy the house at cash. Now that doesn't mean your cash, but anytime you pay the seller in one lump sum, you have to get a discount. Otherwise, you're paying full price for it, and you don't want to use your cash or someone else's cash to pay full price. That would be more controlling real estate. The second one is what we call terms. How much down, how much a month, and how long can I do it for? If you guys ever bought a house, you have a mortgage on it, you had a down payment, you pay on it for 30 years, and if you live in it for 30 years, you're going to pay 3 times the amount of the house. That's what we call terms. If you get a car with financing, that's terms. And unless you walk in and pay cash for the car, you're buying it on terms. Now, the most ideal is to find a property, single family or commercial, it really doesn't matter. It's the same strategy no matter what type of real estate we're going to be working, from land, mobile homes, everything, is to get a great price at a discount, but pay the seller per month for maybe a short period of time. And just so you know how powerful this really is, if you found a distressed property, and let's say that you're a rehabber, you have to come up with the funds. So you either get a private investor or you get a hard money loan, you use your own money. One way or the other, you have to pay the seller off. If you were a rehabber and you went in and got a discount on the price and then set monthly payments for 6 months to allow yourself time to rehab the property, that would save you all that money going to the bank and putting it down and going on your credit report. You could structure that in a seller finance strategy, even though you're buying it at a wholesale price, which is really cool if you think about it, because you could do as many as you can get your hands on. You just need the seller to agree. And if you think about these properties, especially the vacant properties sitting vacant for years, why can't they just wait 6 more months? That will give you time to fix up the property, put it back on the market, and sell it. Everybody gets cashed out. Everyone loves it. So I want you to think of these 3 financing techniques, because ultimately this is going to dictate if you can actually do wholesaling, or you may have to change the strategy and go to maybe a lease option strategy. So once you understand this situation, hey, is if the seller takes a discount on it, great, that's wholesaling. And I want you to think of that. It has to be in one lump sum at a discount, because we're always told if the seller picks the sales price, you pick the terms. If the seller picks the terms, you pick the sales price. If the seller picks both, follow up in 30 days, because there's only one thing that's going to change their mind: time. See, people's circumstances change in time. So wholesaling is always going to be at a cash discount, okay? Working the lease option seller finance business, however, is what we call terms. So we're going to be focusing on this cash discount business. But there's one thing that you have to know, and when you know this one thing, this is what took years to learn, actually. And I didn't even realize I was even doing it. But after all the mistakes that I've made, and trust me, I've made so many mistakes, it's not even funny, I've learned what to do. And I was sitting back in the back of a room one day, and I just started writing out what are the physical things that we do as investors, and put that in a very specific order. Because if I could do that, it's a lot easier to teach. I go up to investors, been in the business 20 years, and I'm like, well, how did you do that? They're like, I don't know, I just do it. You just do it this way. They don't even really know what they're doing or how they're doing it. So it's very difficult to teach it if you don't know what I call those executable steps. What are the physical things we have to do from finding the deal all the way to closing the deal and everything in between? This is actually how REI Pro was founded, was putting in this executable step system. So when you're in REI Pro and you're working a property, you're going to see those 10 steps. Now, we're going to be walking through those 10 steps in this 3-part series. So the very first one is lead generation. Obviously, we need properties. Without properties, we're never going to make money. We're going to then call on the leads. So we need to communicate with the owner, whoever's in charge whoever's can make a decision on the property. We then do a property inspection. Step 4, we go in and we make an offer. The offer is accepted, we sign a contract. We then file an affidavit. We then find the new buyer, and as you can see, finding a new buyer is step 7, but if I had to put it in a specific order, it would be step 7, but that doesn't mean that you can't start finding buyers prior to finding the deal. We then find a buyer, we sign a contract with the buyer, we take the contracts to either a title company or a closing attorney, we close the transaction, we then pick up our check. It's a very 10 simple steps, and when you practice this and you go through this, because so many people, they go, Chris, okay, I did this, now what? I don't know, let's go back to the steps. Okay, I found the deal, what do you need to do now? Oh, I need to talk to let's talk to the owner. Let's get some details, let's find out their motivation, where they are on price, the condition of the property, all those. If that looks good, now what do we do? Well, let's go look at the property. So it's a very logical way that we buy and sell properties as a real estate investor. So I want you to follow this system because this is going to simplify everything for you. You know, real estate is not all that difficult. I think for people, it's very difficult to learn what to do, when to do it, and why they're even doing it. And if you follow these steps, it's going to help out tremendously. All right, so step 1 is finding properties, right? But I don't really like to say you're just finding houses. Really are finding situations is what you're doing. And I want you to spend 90% of your time on this because this is going to be the true key for most people is finding the deals. And you know, there's obviously competition out there. We have to do things a little bit different. There obviously are some overlapping pieces that everyone does, but at the same time, we just got to be a little bit faster. We got to pinpoint where we're going, understand what we're looking for, how to communicate with people, actually just going through these steps, and that's going to be really the key. And it's like, okay, well, where are these properties? But I'm going to go over just a few types of neighborhoods, but I want you to consider a few things before we get there is price range. Okay, so most wholesale properties are going to be in that middle to lower price range. That's just where there's the majority of properties. It's that average price range where you live, and there's a lot of places you can go, one being Zillow. You can just pull up the map and find out, hey, this neighborhood, it's selling for $1 million, but this neighborhood over here is selling for $200,000. And you're going to find where those averages are and finding out where that middle of the road is and just a little bit below. And also, what types of properties are you going to be focusing on? Now, most people, and as I teach it, I'll talk primarily about single family just because there's more of it. But some people may be working the land business. Maybe they're working the commercial side of it. Maybe they're working mobile homes. It really doesn't matter, but you need to figure out what business and types of properties that you're really interested in. And then investment methods. You know, wholesaling is one of those investment methods. State and local laws, each state is going to be a little bit different, you know, depending on strategy and so forth, but that's, you know, kind of your responsibility to get out there and find out what you can do, what you can't do. And what I see, and I think some of you here are probably would agree with, is that it seems like wherever you go, somebody says something different, right? It's like nobody really knows. It's not really in print, or there's a way around it. And but that's kind of your job to investigate those things and find out what you can do. You know, you don't want to get in trouble. I always say there's not a real estate jail. But look at growth opportunities. I think when most people get into real estate, and especially starting with wholesaling, they tend to go to the areas that are the next upcoming area. And what I always tell my students is, that's the last place I want to go because that's where all the big dollar investors are coming in and paying more for those properties. I don't want to go where the competition is. I want to go somewhere else because no matter where I go, there's always going to be a buyer for the house if I bought it right. Now, if I don't buy it right or put it under contract right, then I won't get a buyer. So yeah, these pieces have to work, but I always like to stay away from the growth areas when I'm wholesaling. Okay, I'm just trying to find that middle. Now, if you could get into a growth area, yeah, you could hit a home run. Just keep in mind that's where your competition is going to be. Also, look at the rental rates. So you have to start putting yourself in the buyer's position, which is an investor. You don't know if the investor is going to buy it, fix it up and sell it, or buy it, fix it up and rent it. Okay, so it's always good to understand the rental rates in these different areas. And what exit strategies? Well, with wholesaling, there's really only one exit strategy. So, and that is to sell it cheap. So you're getting it cheap and you're selling it just a little bit more, but still a good deal. Desirability. Think of those things. Take that in consideration. Proximity to where you live. You know, I always say start in your backyard. There's always opportunities nearby. Now, I know if you're in a big city, obviously you got to drive. You know, it could take you an hour and a half, 2 hours to get across a big city, but you really need to be focused on. I'd rather drive 2 hours to get in the right neighborhood than to spend 5 hours driving the wrong neighborhood just because it's closer. So it is key to find places that are close to you. And if you want to venture out and do it, you know, 3 hours away, go do it 3 hours away. Or if you go on vacation, you see a property, that's up to you. And then what types of neighborhoods? And that's what I want to talk about and show you and really pin, because this is a point that I really messed up in the beginning. I was driving the wrong neighborhoods when I got started. And I want to share with you some of those neighborhoods, but at the end of the day, we're trying to find out the owner or the seller's motivation. What is their situation? I want to say it that way. It's like you're an investor, but you're really looking for situations. You know, the situation is causing the issue. So understanding these different types of situations is going to obviously showcase their motivation and what they're willing to do. So obviously there's a lot of signs of what we call motivated sellers. And I think your job is to qualify that seller, qualify them with a list of questions to determine, am I going to waste my time going over to the house, or is this a good opportunity? So I think you get better and better at this as you go, and obviously get some more experience, and you'll become more confident with that experience, but don't let that also hold you back. You know, it's not, you don't want to be the person that, you know, realizes they don't know anything, because the more they learn, they realize they don't know anything. You know, although that's a sign of intelligence, at some point you have to take action. You just got to get out there. And the great thing is sellers don't know you're messing it up, right? So just get out there. There's always going to be an opportunity. You just got to find it. So know your neighborhoods. We like to classify these neighborhoods from an A, B, C, and D. I think this is a very simple formula to follow. And let's go through this. So an A neighborhood is really the top of the line neighborhoods, the most expensive homes. They're usually gated communities, very, very high price points. Keep in mind, those are also the lowest pool of buyers at the same time. As you start to step down into what we call a B neighborhood, this is that middle to high income earners. So generally there's chain stores, like if you drive and there's an Applebee's or TGI Fridays or Ruby Tuesday, something like that, that's generally put in a B marketplace. You'd find Targets there. So a lot of your commercial, you could just look at your commercial around you, and that's going to give you an idea of what types of neighborhoods you're in. Vacant homes do stand out because the majority of homes there are typically well kept up. They're nice. People tend to not, you know, leave trash out. They tend to mow their yards. So when there is an opportunity, it's definitely going to stand out. And there's more owner-occupied homes there, so less rentals generally in this particular type of neighborhood. And then we move to the C neighborhood, and this is what I like to call basically the middle of the road. This is the middle income. This is where the masses are. You can start to see some of those local, smaller businesses, the antique shops, the Joe's Auto Repair. Those types of places are going to be more in the C neighborhoods. This is ideally where you want to be. Okay, so I was always driving the C to B neighborhoods because I was just driving neighborhoods I thought I would like to live in. And the problem with that is that, you know, there's really not a bad neighborhood. It's good for somebody. May not be good for you, but I always told myself it's good for somebody. So it took that's why it took 3 months to do my first deal. I was doing things wrong. So focus in on what we call the C, and that's going to be the average price of home. This is the middle income earners, and I want to go just a little bit below, but not quite as far as the D area. Now, although investors do buy in D neighborhoods, the war zones, those are generally rental properties. Investors buy them so cheap, they rent them out for as much as they can, and they don't fix them up because they never appreciate. This is just a depreciating area. The money's just not in those areas. So I want you to be between these two neighborhoods. I think when you start getting out there and driving, you'll start to see the changes. When you start to see the changes, then that's where you need to turn around and head back the other way, okay? So when you're driving these neighborhoods, and this is going to be my top way of finding these properties, you know, it's great to do yard signs and doing all those things, and not to say that you shouldn't, but physically getting out there and finding properties. I couldn't tell you how many times that I work with a student and they drive around, they're like, Chris, I just can't find that many. And then I fly in, we get in a car together, and next thing you know, it's like 30. It's like, well, how do you see those things? It's knowing what to look for. It's training your eyes. It's looking through my eyes versus trying to look through your eyes in certain key things. And those are the key points that I want to mention to you to hopefully, you know, so you could start with next time you're out there driving is to start looking for these key pieces. Now, I know a lot of people, they're like, Chris, I don't, you know, want to drive. I don't even like driving. Well, at the end of the day, this is going to be the top way of doing it, because I know getting into this business or any business, I have to be willing to do what others aren't. And a lot of people, they're administrative workers when they get in this business. They make sure their Excel sheets are perfect and their sign is perfect. They put it in the right spot, and they're following all the administrative stuff where you really just need to jump in the trenches. I had one of my students actually came from England, and he didn't have a car. He walked in neighborhoods, and he found his first deal, made 11 grand on it. You have to be willing to do what others aren't. Now, let's talk about some of these key points. Obviously, broken windows, tall grass, overflowing mail. You can pretty much Google this, and that's what everybody would say. I'll always like trash day, because that trash can's generally not out. That's usually the first house that catches my eye. No curtains or blinds, and a lot of times you drive by the property, and if you can see the backyard through the front window, that's usually a good sign that it could be potentially vacant. So keep your eye on these things. And I know it's hard if you're driving by yourself, but if you're working with a partner or spouse, obviously it's going to make this a lot easier. So here's some more. Check the expiration date on vehicles. This was a big one. I remember driving around in Austin, Texas, and there was a car parked in the driveway, and I said, hey, let's write that one down. That one's vacant. And my student's like, there's a car in the driveway. How do you know it's vacant? And I'm like, look at the license plate. It expired 3 years ago. And a lot of people, even if they don't have an expired tag, sometimes they like to park by their neighbors in their neighbor's driveway so other people don't think it's vacant, right? So check for that. The meter's missing. Look for the meter. You know, obviously, if it's on the back side of the house, that's not gonna help you. But look for those, you know, meters that have been taken off. Any kind of city notices posted in the window or on the door. If you've never seen one and you drive by a house, just pull up and go read the notice. Take a snapshot with your phone. Become more knowledgeable about what's going on. No personal things, and this one's a big one for me. There's no plant on the porch. There's no hose on the side of the house. I'm looking for the things that normal people would have at the property or sitting outside, and they're not there. Because there's a lot of times you'll drive by a property, the grass is cut, it looks great, somebody must live there, but at the same time it could be vacant. So definitely check for that. And postal workers, ask the postal worker when you're driving around. Just stop and say, hey, my name is Chris, actually investor looking to buy a few properties in the neighborhood, and just thought you might know where maybe some of the vacant properties are, because I'm looking to buy. You know, just say it very nice, and I can tell you 9 times out of 10 they're going to tell you, hey, there's a house 2 streets down that just went vacant. Somebody just moved out of this house. They're going to know their neighborhood, because the post office is the only company on the planet that actually deems a property vacant for no mail. And that's where a lot of, You'll see vacant leads listings. Those are all really run through the postal service. So ask your postal worker where those potential properties are. Speak with the neighbors. Done this several times. If it looks vacant, go talk to the neighbors, because sometimes it's hard to find people. Okay? This is kind of what you're looking for. This may be a little extreme, but these are all actual properties that I've wholesaled. But these are small general houses. These are, you know, they're destroyed, and we've got to do something with it. If you think about it, you know, all you're doing is helping the neighborhood grow, improve, and really bring people together. You know, if you lived across the street from one of these houses, you tend to not mow your yard as much. You tend to not put as much into your house because it's depressing, right? So these are the kind of properties that you're looking for, but these are also properties you'd be looking for. Could you tell me why these are vacant? And these are actual properties that we acquired, but the first property on the left there, the nice little brick house, the yard's mowed. Do you see anything on the side of the house? No. But what really caught my attention to get out of the car and take this picture was all the buzzards that were flying around in the backyard. Come to find out, a deer jumped over, went through the fence, and it was dead. And there was buzzards flying around. If somebody actually lived there, they would have noticed that. So I knew that that house is potentially vacant. And then you look at I'm not even sure what kind of car that is, but it's destroyed. It's got trash bags covering up the windows, and you can see the leaves on the roof. It's just not being taken care of. And if you think about it, even if somebody is living there, it may just be a rental. And sometimes I'll even contact the owner once I know that they don't live there, they live somewhere else, and say, "Hi, my name is Chris. I was calling about that trashed house," right? So what do you mean? Well, it looked vacant to me. No, I have a renter in there. Well, I don't know. I drove by. It looked vacant. No, they just paid me a couple weeks ago. I don't know. It starts to remind people why there's never a career day to be a landlord, right? So that's kind of reminds people of why they shouldn't have done it, right? Why they don't want to be a landlord anymore. So these are things that I want you to just start looking for. It's opening your eyes to what's already around you. And there's a lot of reasons why people have vacant properties. Live out of town, can't attend to it. Maybe they don't have enough money to repair the property. That's usually a big one. Seller's tired of renting. They keep going through. I can tell you the last 2 rehabs we did were both landlords tired of renting. They're tired of dealing with tenants. And when you're tired of dealing with tenants and you're really not making much cash flow, and then you have to rent the properties out for a little bit less, and you don't have the funds to fix it up, and it just gets more depressing. And eventually somebody just say, "I've got to go. I want to unload it." Don't know what to do with it. Seller inherited the property. There's a lot of different reasons why, but at the end of the day, it's costing the owner money. There's still taxes that are paid on the property. You should have insurance on the property. Doesn't mean they do, but they should. Somebody could get hurt on the property, vandalize the property. It's costing the seller money, so why wouldn't they want to sell it? That's what I always told myself. So some of the first steps when you do go out and you pick up some properties that are potentially vacant, and I also want you to pull properties that are for sale by owner or even houses for rent, is determine, is the owner an absentee owner or not? And years ago, you would just go to the tax assessor. Well, now you just plug that property into the quick lookup in REI Pro, which we're actually going to go through a deal. I actually found a property today, and I'm going to go through it here just shortly here. But verify that the owner's tax billing address is different than the actual property address, and that will tell you right there that they don't live there. Now, you're not sure if it is vacant or if it is rented, but it appears to be. Research the owner's phone number. Let's call them. Why send out material when you could just pull their phone number and call them? You want to separate yourself. So a typical person or typical investor, they'll go find some properties, they put a bunch of, ugly letters together, and they mail them out. And that's what everybody else is doing. When you can pick up the phone and find their number and actually call them and go through the phone script, you're going to grab their attention right there. Heck, I've talked to people. They said, no, how'd you know I own that property? Well, it's just public records. Oh, no, I don't want to sell that property. 2 days later, they call me back and say, actually, I do want to sell that property. They weren't even thinking of selling until I actually called, right? Because there's no for sale by owner sign out there, right? It's just a vacant property. It's not on their mind, but I'm making it on their mind to say, yeah, I don't want to deal with it. That property has been costing me money. And now they start to think, hey, I need to unload that. So we need to contact the property owner, and then at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, let's create a follow-up system. But we're going to go through this step by step. Other ways, obviously, you could do direct mail, especially if you have a high volume of leads. Obviously, you can go into REI Pro, pull absentee owners. The end of the day, real estate's about timing. You never know when someone's at that timing of, I just need to do something with the house, and that's why you could do high volume of direct mail. Also think of pre-foreclosures. You could actually wholesale a pre-foreclosure to an investor that can go in and save that person's credit and save the house. Obviously, there's internet sites from Craigslist to Zillow and all kinds of for sale by owners, owners.com, fsbo.com. You just never know if they're motivated to sell, but just go back to, do they want a cash discount or terms? If it's cash discount, it'll be wholesale. If they are open to terms, that's just when you switch strategy to a lease option. Obviously, your personal website, you could do some landing pages, which nothing more than an opt-in page of how somebody could sell their house, cash offer, things of that nature, yard signs, just general marketing you could do. Every time you go to the restaurant, hand your business card to the waitress or the waiter. Everybody needs a property, and at the same time, people do know other people that are looking to sell. So your job is simply just putting the two together and getting rich in the process. That's it. Abandoned property lists from the city, real estate agents would know as well. So, and there's a lot more too. It's just, my favorite is driving around. Not only do you get to spot out properties that most people don't go driving around, you also get to learn the neighborhood. You get to learn your marketplace better, and that's really a win-win. That's like you becoming a doctor and not going to school for it because you don't understand it or you don't read through the manual. You have to educate yourself on where you live and the types of markets and focus on those C neighborhoods. That's where the majority of these opportunities are going to be. Sure, could you wholesale a house in a multi-million-dollar neighborhood? Absolutely. It's just the needle in the haystack approach. Could you wholesale a property in a war zone? Sure, you can, but where are the majority of these properties at? And that's going to be that C to lower C marketplaces. Step two, now that we've found the property, we've identified who the owner is, they don't live there, now we're just simply following step two in REI Pro and going through a list of questions to qualify the seller. Is this an opportunity for me to go look at or not? And we're going to actually go through those questions and some of the key questions that I like to ask when I'm talking with the seller. So call the seller, which is going to go through step two. You can also print out what's called a property research form. I don't think a lot of people know this, but it's actually in your tools section. A lot of people like to do printouts. They carry them with them in their car. If they talk in their car, they have something to follow up with. Some people just don't like using their mobile phones to use REI Pro, and some people, that's all they use is mobile phones with REI Pro. So, but if you can't find their phone number and you can't get a contact for that property, then of course that's when you would want to send a postcard or a letter. In that case, which I'm going to show you how to do inside of REI Pro as well. So there's what I call the property owner letter. Now this is a very specific letter that I would send to all vacant property. It's kind of general, but at the same time, I've done a couple hundred deals just with this letter, easily. Okay, and then there's obviously postcards where maybe you're doing, you have more higher count. Maybe you're doing 100 to 200. That's where postcards will come into play. And you could go through REI Pro. There's several templates from a general template all the way down to a very specific target. These are the 3 vacant postcards that we've designed just for this. So find that right postcard and do a direct mail campaign and get out there. So we need to call people, and I know a lot of people are very scared about this part, and I can tell you honestly, a lot of people will fail at this. This is probably one of the hardest steps, and keep in mind we're only at step 2 here, but I would say this is one of the hardest steps. It's really understanding how to build trust, really understand the questions you need. What am I looking for? If they say this, how do I respond? I could see this as being probably one of the most difficult steps for a lot of people. And I always say, look, just take a deep breath. Introduce yourself, get to the point, ask the questions in step 2, thank them for their time, and step 5, now actually pick up the phone and make the call, right? Bo actually had a really good idea. He was telling me a story when he got started, and he used to call on properties in like a different county. He would even call local property because he's like, you know what, if I mess up, I wasn't interested in the property anyways. And that was a great way for him to start feeling more comfortable. You'll see that sellers generally ask you the same questions, so your response is going to be better. It's going to sound more professional, and that's where you start really building trust with people. And at the end of the day, no one's ever going to do business with you until they buy you first. Okay, so build that trust over the phone, ask the right questions, qualify the seller. In worst case scenario, and I talk to a lot of sellers that anytime you hear me say, okay, well, let me drive by the property again. If it's something I'm interested in, I'll give you a call back. That's generally, I'm not going statement at the end. I already know that it's not a lead. They're not motivated. They want full price. They're not willing to take a penny less, and so forth. Just make the call, right? Don't be scared of the phone. I know I was scared. My very first phone call, trust me, first phone call, and man, I was doing all that administrative stuff. I used to cut out every ad in the Washington Post, tape it to this property questionnaire that we built, and I spent hours doing that, and then I'd call and blow right through all these, and then I'd have to peel the tape back off of each one so I could reuse it. I spent more time finding excuses not to call than to just call, and I was nervous, but my very first call, this lady cussed me out, and I have no idea why. I'm just calling to inquire about buying your house. And this lady was so upset. But what did I do? I just picked up the phone and I dialed the next number. And that's how you have to be. Don't let one or two people in the world dictate what you're going to do or affect you in a way that, man, I just don't know if this business is for me. I want you to just ignore it. You need to just put all that negativity off to the side, and let's focus on going out there and helping a lot of people with this business. So we're going to go through these lists of questions. I'm actually going to jump into that for you and show you how to do that. But you're going to need some basic negotiating skills, and the very first tip I'm going to give you is you really just need to solve problems, and that's building trust with the owner. That's how you talk. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be a grammar Nazi. You just have to really understand about people and care about people. I see some of these investors out there, you can tell they've been to, this crazy seminar because they teaching them like, nope, that's all I can do. I don't want to waste my time if you can't do this. I mean, they just have this edge, this nastiness about them. You don't have to be that way. You do have to be forward. You have to be blunt sometimes. Sometimes you have to put your foot down. But at the end of the day, I want you to take control of the conversation. You taking control of the conversation is going to win every time. And the way that I control conversations in this negotiating piece is that I'm always asking them a question. Okay, it's when they start talking too much or asking me questions is when I lose control of the conversation. So I want to make sure that I'm always in control, and I want you to tell yourself that you are in control, not the seller. Okay, keep in mind, seller, they have a problem, and they need your help to figure out how to get rid of that problem, and that's where you come in. And then if it looks like a good deal over the phone or something, hey, we need to go look at this property. That's obviously when the relationship really is built, because now it's a face-to-face. They get to see who you are, how you dress, all those good things. I always say dress the part when you go do a property inspection. And because I don't want you to, if I were in Manhattan, I would have suit and tie. If I'm in Houston, Texas, I'm going to have a nice polo golf shirt on. So I would just want you to dress the part. And don't show up in your Ferrari, because now they're going to think that you can buy the whole neighborhood. Okay, so remember, you're always I'm broke, but this is what I can do for your house. I really want to buy it. I'm just local. I'm small. I'm not a big deal. That's how I want you to act when you're talking with people. Okay, so I want you to go through just like this particular property. This is a property that I wholesaled here. I made $7,000 on this house. I put it under contract for 11, and I made 7. I mean, it was pretty awesome. But I learned a valuable lesson on this. I want to share this. I usually share this at our live events, but I want to share it with you because it was one of those learning lessons you learn that you'd never do again. And so this property, I drove by. Obviously, it's vacant, tall grass. And I went back and researched the owner, called the owner, lived out of state. I said, hi, my name is Chris. I was calling about this property, 123 Happy Street. It appeared to be vacant. Always make sure you say appeared to be vacant, because I remember that one time I told you earlier, I said, yeah, I'm calling about that trashed house on Happy Street. And they're like, we live here. Whoops, wrong number, right? So always say appeared to be vacant. I was just curious to see if you might be interested in selling it. And it's kind of a yes or no initial phone script, and I'm going to show you how to do that in REI Pro. But it's kind of like yes or no, and it puts them on the spot for a second. And that starts the control piece. And that's where this, yes, I want to sell it. And I'm like, great. I notice you live out of state. Is there any way that, or do you have by chance somebody local that could actually show me the property? And of course she said, no, I don't, but I'm sure the front door's wide open. You can go in. So I said, okay. So here I drive over there, and I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, okay? And I get out of the car, and this is in Texas. This is hot, okay? The very first thing I'm thinking is, oh my goodness, I'm going to step on a snake. I mean, that was the first thing. It took me about 30 minutes to get to the front door. I was a nervous wreck. And of course, the front door was open. And I opened it up, and of course, it's pitch black. All the utilities are off on the house. And I noticed that there are a lot of black trash bags all in the living room. And of course, I'm like, yeah, I wonder, maybe a hoarder or somebody like that. Got my way to the back of the house. The house was falling apart. There were holes in the floor. I mean, it was rough. It was rough. But to me, I want it to be rough. When I walk in, I want to smell cat urine, right? Because I know I'm going to get a better deal. And so I come back in. Of course, curiosity sets in, and I'm like, I wonder what's in the black trash bags. So I start to untie one. Of course, I can't see. And all this is happening in about 3 seconds. And I get a little bit closer. Now it's 0.3 seconds. And I open it up just enough to see they were dead chickens with their heads cut off. And I freaked out. And it took me about 0.2 seconds to get back to my car. And I'm sitting in the car, and I'm like, holy cow, my heart is racing at this point. And I said, what did I learn from that? And I learned a very valuable lesson. Every time you go do a property inspection, always, I mean always, bring a flashlight. As simple as that sounds, that's how bad I was when I was getting started. It sounds so normal and basic today, but that was a learning lesson on top of a million other learning lessons that you package. You really figure out how to get through this business. And then it becomes a snowball effect. It's like, I don't even know where these people are calling me from. Good Lord, I got 4 calls here and so forth. And that was the beauty of the business. It's almost like you have to go through some suffering. You got to get in the trenches. You got to get your feet wet. You just got to take a chance. Because so many people, they just give up, or they just don't know where to start, or they don't know how to keep going. And that's where these executable steps are going to be key for you. Just a few basic things that I want you to check for. Always fill out a property inspection sheet. You can print that out in step 3. You may have your own as well. Look at the floors. Is it on a pier beam or a concrete slab? Does it need to be leveled if it is on a pier beam? Obviously, those could get expensive or could have cracked foundation. Look for trees around the property that are growing towards the property. This will also cause foundation. I learned that from a foundation guy years ago. The tree is growing towards the property, that could be bad just because of the root systems. Look for deteriorated rotted wood, obviously. Roof damage, kind of looking at big things at this point. And obviously you'll get down and fine-tune getting into the smaller things. Painting, obviously. Does it need electrical? Is the electrical even updated? You start looking at these older properties, it's something you need to consider. Central heat and air, definitely depends on where you live in the country, if you even have this, but most people would. Check basement for dampness in areas that do have basements. Sump pumps, check fireplaces, determine operational, plumbing. As you can see, we're really going through a lot of big ticket items. And the reason why I go through the big ticket items, I don't want you in the house for 2 hours. Trust me, the seller does not want you in the house for 2 hours. If they accept the offer, I can always go back and do a more detailed, thorough inspection. I just need to get some general numbers and find out exactly what are the big ticket items at this point. I walk in a kitchen, it's outdated and it's not in great shape. I just put check, yes, the whole kitchen gets redone. I mean, this is just how I do it. So I can literally walk through the property in 15 minutes and have a really good idea of how much it's going to cost. Now that took time, experience, knowledge, but you have to start somewhere. It's always good to have a contractor. If you know a contractor to go with you, say, how much do you think? You don't have to be exact on the number, and that's the key. You know, when people walk in a house, they see stuff like this. And you have to ask yourself, is it really that bad? You know, because if you're going to replace the sheetrock anyways, what's the big deal? They've already ripped part of it off. Or I like the kitchens that have been gutted, because now, hey, I can put in a whole new kitchen the way I want it. It's a lot easier than have to tear out the kitchen and start over again. So you have to just see these things that, although visually it's like, oh my gosh, what happened to the house? It may not be so bad, or it may not even cost that much money. Obviously, foundations are really the key to this business, and there's a couple of different things. You're always going to see some settling in a property no matter where you live. You see straight cracks, or you see staircase cracks. You're going to see these types of cracks, and staircase cracks are going to be the worst, because what happens when you see like a staircase crack, like in this picture here, and generally you'll see this a lot with center block homes, is the house actually twisted. You know how normal houses, they just kind of settle down and then you start getting a crack in the door frame or the window frame. This is a little bit more serious because now the house is twisted. So if you see a crack like this, be sure to check all sides, because if this side's damaged, most likely multiple sides of the house and multiple areas are going to need to be corrected. And this could ultimately determine if you buy the house or not too. So it's a real big deal, is the foundation, just because of the cost factor. But you could also use that in your negotiation of why you're offering a specific dollar amount as well. So keep that in mind. Just a note here, and like I've already said, don't spend 2 hours in the house. Okay, don't do that. You're going to look like you're an amateur doing that. Okay, so just go in there, play the part, have your inspection sheet out. I'd rather you spend more time talking and building the relationship with the owner than you are really looking at things, because that ultimately is really going to determine if this is a deal or not. I couldn't tell you how many sellers we've dealt with where they just wanted to deal with us. It wouldn't matter if the price was a little bit less. They wanted to do business with us. They trusted us. They knew we were for real. And that's how I want you to talk to the owner. And it doesn't even have to be on real estate. I mean, if you don't really know what you're doing, don't talk about real estate. Talk about the weather. Talk about a sports team. Talk about something else, because the relationship is more valuable than your knowledge about real estate. And that's what I always got stuck with. I was always trying to prove that I knew what I was talking about. And I came across as being cocky, and people really didn't want to do business with me. And it had nothing to do with that. It's just, I thought that's what people wanted to hear, is some extremely knowledgeable person to come in there and tell them what to do. And it's really the exact opposite. People want to talk to people they like talking to. And that starts the trust piece. So keep that in mind when you're going through the property. Before we end, I'm going to actually go through REI Pro, so we're not done yet. I know you guys have been hanging in there. It's going to be Tuesday, November 7th. It's going to be at 8 p.m. We're going to be emailing everybody how to get registered for that, as well as going through a recap. Yes, this is being recorded, so you guys will be able to go back and recap. And I want you to go, and of course it's going to go in the Education Center of REI Pro, so you can go back and go through this training, because you're always going to pick up something new each time you do it. But now we really start getting into the fun stuff now, and that's how do we run the numbers? How do we actually make an offer? Because when I make an offer, I'm really looking at every angle of the situation, and that helps me present the offer. And then we're actually going to go through a contract. How do you actually fill out a contract for wholesale deals? So we've got a big piece in part 2, so you definitely need to be there. Don't miss that. We'll also put a link on the dashboard for you guys to register by tomorrow, and get registered for that, because like I say, we always fill the house. Just a side note, an announcement for you guys, because we get a ton of calls. You may or may not be aware, we're actually doing our last live event. It's going to be in Los Angeles, and I know if you live in Florida, that's a long ways, but I'm going to tell you about 50% of the crowd usually flies from another state. Okay, our last event in Atlanta, we had 2 guys fly from New Zealand. Okay, so I really want you guys to be there. It's going to be our last event of the year. Not sure when we're going to go back on the road. And those of you that have been to our event, you know exactly what you get when you come to one of our events. And keep in mind, and when I tell people this, they're like, yeah, right, okay. Our events, we keep probably about 60 people. Sometimes we'll move 70 in there, but that's the cap. And the reason is because the amount of information that I have to do in 2 days. And if you think about it, if we had a room full of people, they'd be asking questions every 5 minutes. We couldn't even get through half the material. So we do like to keep the classroom sizes a lot smaller. It's extremely educational. We do not sell anything at the events. So if you can make it to Los Angeles, it's going to be on December 9th and 10th. Definitely make it out. It will totally be worth your time. It's your education. I know when people would tell me, gosh, you're driving all the way to Dallas. It's like a 3-hour drive. I'm like, yeah, this is my future right here. I need to pick up as much information as I possibly can on this business, because I've got to put food on the table. I mean, that's always my mentality. So it's all about education. It's also repetition. We do have a lot of repeat people come back to our events just for the repetition. Here's what we're going to be talking about. And I love teaching this particular strategy. It's one of my favorites, especially if you're in California. This would be the strategy, one of the major strategies you would be using. Just a simple fact of the cost of real estate there. Even if you've saved up a lot of money, you couldn't buy a lot of properties in California. You have to learn how to control properties. We're going to talk about that with lease options, how to get paid 3 times. Also, pre-foreclosure investing. I can tell you right now, not many people teach this. It's because they just don't know how to do it. We're going to be going through the pre-foreclosure side of it. And you could take wholesaling and learn pre-foreclosures. You'll be able to find pre-foreclosures that you could wholesale. Now that's a niche business right there. We're going to go through some explosive marketing strategies, what's working today, how we do our business. We really walk you through the blueprint of exactly how we market properties all the way down to the funnel of getting prospects and not spending a lot of money doing it. We have some guest speakers. Those of you that are on REI Pro, you know who Bo Mannery is the co-founder. So Bo and myself own the software. We've developed the software, been working on it for years. It's been our big baby, and we're continually growing. We've got a lot of new features actually getting ready to come out, which we're really excited about. But Bo's going to be talking about the marketing funnel and how he's been able to generate millions of dollars with online. Then we have Joe Thomas coming in. He's coming in from Birmingham, Alabama, to come and present. He's an awesome networking guy. Teaches you how to network with people, which is going to build your confidence when you're talking to investors, you're talking to sellers, buyers, and if you're going to an investment club where you need to build some relationships and building your power team, this is a guy to do it. Also, Kenneth Darby played for the University of Alabama, big running back there, went to the NFL. He's also going to be there as a guest speaker and tell you how he did his first real estate deal. So going from an NFL career to now being a real estate investor is pretty awesome. So you'll get to meet him. And success stories. I mean, that's really what it's all about. It's providing you with the information and the knowledge, the know-how to get out there and make it real. Okay, just like these two, $660,000 the first year, $400,000 equity on one property that we sell or finance with no money down, by the way. NBA star, one of my students here, Francisco, now turning real estate investor. Pretty awesome story. And Chris Good, just a young guy, just getting started in real estate and made $11,000 first deal. That's the key when you get educated. You know how to do it. You know how to advance your career, build it strong. It's always about building that foundation. We do have a couple of payment options. And if you're a single person, it's $97. 2 people, it's $197. You do get a live event workbook there. I want you to stay along. It's my whole presentation. is going to be in the workbook. You take notes, and you also get to do a photo shoot with me, Bo, and the guest speakers, because that's a huge credibility piece that you start using that photo, put it on your website, things of that nature, because especially if you're just getting started, you need some credibility, and this is what we call branding by association. And then we do have a $497 package, which actually includes both my home study courses that we do not sell. It's actually going to be on a digital drive that you get dinner with the speakers, also get a signed autograph book. Those people that have been asking about our home study course is the only way that I'm going to offer it right now. And so you might want to take advantage. Again, that would be for 2 people. The big thing is just getting started right. I see so many people, they just start wrong. So make it to LA. I promise you, this will totally change the way you view real estate and actually start getting things done. All you got to do is go to chrisgofflive.com. Once we sell out, we will close the event. We're going to probably cap this at about 60 people, and that includes guests as well. So it's not 60 people plus guests. So we do like to keep this class size a little bit smaller than normal. All right, I'm going to jump into REI Pro because I want to get through. Let me get change screens here. I actually found this deal today, which is pretty awesome. And let me get to it again. All right, so we're going to log in here. I'm going to go to my properties. I've already entered this property in here. So I was driving around today and actually found this property. I was like, hey, this is perfect timing. So I want to walk you through the first initial steps here. So number one, I always like to use quick lookup. It's a quick lookup to see, hey, if the owner says they live there, then I don't have to add it to REI Pro and eventually go back and delete it. You can just quickly look that up through quick lookup, and then you could always add it here. So I've got a photo here of this property, and here it's a Sweet Gum. We've already done 2 properties on this particular road, so it's definitely an area of interest for us. It's kind of that lower C part of Peachtree City. So we're on step 1. These are the executable steps, especially for somebody that has never been in REI Pro. These are the steps that we're actually walking through in this 3-part series. So the very first thing that I get to see is the property details. Is it owner occupied? Who owns the property? And a lot of basic facts. Now, this is very dependent on your tax assessor, and sometimes your tax assessor is not very good. And when it's not very good, then we're not looking very good either. But at the same time, we wanted to create edit details. A lot of people don't know that this is here, but if you click edit details, you can actually go back in and edit the information and then save it. Okay, so if you know for sure that, hey, Chris, that's actually a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, you can actually go and edit it from here. So you have the legal description, which we'll need for the contract. You can see the last sale date, 1984. Last sale amount, $56,000. Who's owned a property that long, right? That might be a really great opportunity where we're hitting those perfect timing where it's sitting vacant and they've owned it forever. So this might be a really good property. You can see the tax information, where they live. They actually do live here in the local area. So this is probably an owner that's been renting the property out for quite some time. You might just hit them at the right time of saying, you know, that property's been good to me, it's time to unload it. Okay, you can also check for any kind of mortgage information. The last mortgage recording date was 1985 for $42,000, so that probably owns the house free and clear at this point because there's no other recorded mortgages that we can see on the property. So now I know that he may be willing to really sell this at a discount. And you can run some comparable sales and so forth, but we're really going to talk about that stuff when we get into part 2 when we're making an offer. So here I've drove by the property, I've checked the property details, I see that they don't live there, so I know it's vacant or it could be rented, but I know the owner doesn't live there. Now I need to take this property and move into step 2. Now, for a lot of these hard to find owners, we really wanted to put in a phone search capability because I could tell you this was the hardest part for me when I got started as investors. This is really a big deal, and I want you to really utilize and take advantage of this particular piece here because otherwise I have to send a letter or a postcard, but if I can find their phone number, man, I have direct contact with the owner. We do have a free report. Again, it's free. Sometimes it's hit and miss. If you don't get anything, we do have more of a full skip trace report. And I actually ran this It is a $5 charge. If you don't get a phone number, we don't charge you, although we are getting charged for this. We're the only software that has something like this because it's very difficult to get, by the way. This is not something easy to get and actually put in a software. So I actually ran the skip trace report because I want to show you what it looks like. Now, don't take these numbers down here. So here I could see, oh, and one tip here, don't put in their first name. Just leave that blank and put in their keep the last name, because that'll pull everybody with that last name. If you put their first name, then it's only looking for that first name, so you may not get back the results that you want. And how do you know? We have Kathy Holden. That could be the spouse of Malcolm Holden, right? It could be a sister. It could be, you just don't know. It could be the daughter and so forth. But here we have some phone numbers. Now we could start calling. And what I love about this, and this will also show a deceased indicator. There'll be a red dot here if this particular owner has passed on. You can see their approximate age, but here's the important part. The last reported date of this phone number was today. So I know as I start going through these numbers, I know one of them is going to hit. I may not be able to get a hold of Malcolm, but maybe I get a hold of Kathy. It doesn't matter who I get a hold of as long as I can get a hold of somebody that can make a decision. And that's really the powerful piece to this phone number search. So if you're having a hard time finding phone numbers, this is where you go to get it done. Now that we have the phone number, we need to call the owner. This is actually going to be a big update feature, this part 2, and we've taken everyone's advice. So you're going to see some dramatic changes in this part 2 coming very, very soon for you guys, including your own form builder so you can ask the questions that you want. These are questions that I've asked. Of course, I have this stuff memorized by now, but when you're just getting started, it's like you're really not sure what to say. So in the very first part, making the call, you have a couple of different phone scripts. As I do this, it'll actually change that phone script. So we know this is a vacant lead. Hi, my name's Christopher Goff. I was calling about a property located at 109 Sweet Gum in Peachtree City. It appeared to be vacant. I was wondering if you'd be interested in selling it. Now, when you go through these questions, that's the initial script. I want you to turn, they're bullet pointed questions because I want you to turn it into a conversation. So if they say, yeah, I was thinking about selling that property, well, let me ask, is the property listed with a realtor? Because sometimes, the sign may not, no, it's not listed. Okay, great. Is the property vacant? Yes, it is vacant. Well, let me ask you, does the property need any repairs? I always like to ask them what they think it needs because I want them to point out all the things that are wrong with it. When they point out the pains, that's more, I'm building more of a negotiating power when they keep pointing out everything that's wrong with it, okay? And if they don't tell me everything, I'm going to see things while I'm there anyways. Okay, so I always like to throw that in there right in the beginning. It's probably the most important question. This is really going to help us understand their motivation. May I ask why you're selling it? Hey, I've had that property rented for years. I'm just tired. I just need to get rid of it. I want to hear those things. I don't want to hear, well, I just want to see what I could get for it. I really want to find out moving. I want to understand the situation behind their motivation. And when I can feel that situation, I know they're going to get rid of the property. I know they need to sell the property. Now I can move along with these other questions. I noticed that it was vacant. Have you been trying to sell the property? And how long, if so? What would you ask for the property? And of course, the first thing you say is that negotiable. And they may not even know. And sometimes you'll have sellers go, well, just give me a price. And I hate when they do that because it's like, no, I need to know what you think you want for it first because we may be in two different ballparks, right? So I always want you to follow this up. Let me ask, if I pay cash and close quickly, what would be the least amount you would accept? And no matter what they say, I want you to follow up, is that the best you can do? You will be amazed. I've seen people drop the price 30 grand. You will be amazed that people actually come off of that because it's almost like a challenge. Is that the best you can do? And of course, say it in the right way and then put in that price. Now, let me ask you, do you need to be cashed out or would you accept monthly payments short term? And this could potentially open up a new strategy, and that's why it's there. So, of course, if I know, hey, I've rented it, I need to get rid of it, there's things wrong with it, and it's a decent price, hey, I'm going to go ahead and schedule the appointment right there. There's no point of talking about it anymore. I need to come look at it. Okay, but open it up. They may be open to terms. You may sell or finance the property. They may be willing to do something else with the property. You just don't know. Now, most sellers are going to say, no, I just want to be done with it. Okay, you know, some sellers, you know, they like to take payments. They usually, I could pay a little bit more when I do that. Just thought, you know, I'd ask you to see if you'd be interested. Now I've just, even if they say no, I've just planted that seed, because I always want you to make multiple offers anyways. Okay, that more offers you give them at the same time, the more they feel they have to choose one of them. Instead of going in there and say, hey, I'll give you 40 cents on the dollar, it's easy to say no. Okay, so if so, then you would go to the additional question section, schedule an appointment, any kind of conversation notes, you would just enter it here. You would then go to the top, click save, and now I'm moving into step 3, which is the property inspection. Now, the first thing I want you to do is you can print out our blank property inspection. It is a very short form. I like them short. You can also, we've given you some resources here to find out, you know, they have more detailed pricing in, you know, specific areas of the country, because it's going to change. But here's where I can start entering in information of cost and then total this up as I go through the property. You can even add additional rooms if it's not here and so forth. If I click on that, you can see we have so many different types of rooms. Every property is going to be a little bit different, but we do try to take the general pieces here. I'm then going to update this total. That's an important thing for you to do, because we're going to carry that number over into step 4, and that's going to help us understand the cost for repairs on this property. So that's where we are. So we've gone from step 1 of finding it, but more importantly, we've also talked about the difference between cash and terms, as well as what neighborhoods would be best for wholesaling. My favorite way to find them is driving around. There's obviously other ways to do that, and I wouldn't just rely on one way. I would always tell you, you know, take 2 or 3 hours one day and go find properties. I usually set a limit. Hey, as soon as I find 30 properties, I go home. And people say, well, how long do you drive? Well, I drive as long as it takes. This is what I do. This is my business. Those of you that don't have much time, take the time that you can. Maybe go to work a different way. Jump in a neighborhood. Just see what's out there. It's just a matter of finding one deal. One deal will change everything. Okay, so find that one deal. We then move into qualifying the seller, of going through questions, finding phone numbers. Now, one more thing that I want to point out, because I just talked about talking to them. You can also add this to direct mail, and I also have a letter that you can print. So let's say you just have this one, it's on the fly. I want you to go down to where it says property owner letter. This is the letter that I want you to print for all general and vacant properties. You can also upload your own custom letters as well. Right down here you can say include your company logo if you've already uploaded it into REI Pro or not. I usually like to leave this blank. So I'm going to uncheck that when I print. I don't want to have letterhead when I'm sending a letter to a house that's in distress, because if I use letterhead and it looks like some big company's interested now in buying my house, then they're always going to ask for more. Remember I said I want to look broke. Okay, so uncheck that, and I want you to pull up, you can pull it up in a PDF, or you can pull it up in a Word document if you ever want to just change it or tweak it just a little bit. You can also upload. You go to manage custom letters, that'll take you to the back end where all of your letters are going to be in there. So there's a couple of things here. We're either going to talk to them. Now if it's not a deal, we move on. You can follow up. Let's go back up here, and then you could change this and say, hey, you know, let's do a follow-up on this property, and then I could go ahead and change the dates and select the dates of that particular follow-up. That follow-up will now be pushed to your dashboard as a reminder to remind you that you do need to follow up. So go ahead and do change these statuses. You can even create your own custom status as well over here. Okay. Now when I do go inspect the property in step 3, I do like to upload images. If you just click on images, you can upload up to, I think we have 20 here. So upload your images there. Any kind of property notes, if you have documents like HOA documents or any document that you want to attach a contractor bid that gave you, you could do that here as well, and then some other cool things that you can do too. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. I know this is going to be a long training. Definitely appreciate you guys hanging in there and going through. I am going to open it up for a few questions, and we'll take those questions. All you have to do is just type in the box. I will answer as many questions as I can get to. So I want you to just think, if you're a beginner, just think of you're not really buying the house, you're just putting it under contract to buy, but signing or selling the contract. I know that sounds so weird. That sounded so weird to me when somebody said you could do that. I'm like, is this legal? So just type in. We've got a few questions here. Let me just start going through them as you guys are typing. There is just a slight delay. Ashley, what do you wear when you go door knocking? You know, I kind of goes back to dressing the part, you know, where you live. You don't want to look like a salesperson. That's the last thing. But if you go door knocking, obviously be very careful, and also be sure that you're not going into an area that is no soliciting. So like the neighborhood I live in, you can't solicit in here. So you don't want to look like a salesperson. Just be you. You know, and that's the best way that I could say it. What do you do, or what do you wear to feel comfortable? And just don't overdo it though either. And you know, take the worst car or vehicle that you have when you do it. Okay. We had this Tahoe, and this was years ago, and we had cash for your house. We had that all printed on the vehicle. You know, it wasn't printed; it was stickers back then. And we went into this neighborhood, and there were 3 guys literally chasing us down the street. And I'm not sure if they thought we had cash in the Tahoe, because we had like cash written all over the whole Tahoe. But be careful when you go do those types of things. All right. Let's see, Brew, I think that's how you say your name there. Beginner question, what would happen if you didn't find a buyer when you're wholesaling? That's going to be, you're not obligated to buy it, because when we go through contracts in step 2, I'm going to show you the clauses that you're going to need in the contract. So if you can't find an investor by the time you need to, then you can simply back away from the deal. No harm, no foul. Of course, I wouldn't ever want to back away from the deal. I'd always want to go to the seller and say, hey, could I extend the agreement just a little bit more? Okay. All right, Greg. In the construction business, Arizona, trying to do real estate investing part-time, work on the weekends really sucks. I hear about that. I've made up his mind. You're going to get going here in January, investing in order to do that, acquisitions, lead manager, marketing, so forth, REI Pro system while I close out the construction business. Big question is this, and I'm trying to, let me open this up just a little bit more there, Greg. Should I pay based on commissions? Actually, you know what I would recommend, Greg, is to actually go to the live event in LA, since it's fairly close to you, because these questions about paying commission, stuff like that, there's a few rules here and things you can do and what you can't do. So that's going to be more of a live event type of question. How do you structure this payout type of thing? Because it is kind of personal too, and I just don't want to just blurt it out there. But I think at the end of the day, just focus on finding the deals, and I think that itself is going to take care of a lot of different things. All right, Nikita. Is there a cap on wholesaling in California? It's not necessarily a cap for California. You know, when I first got started, I did so many deals, my attorney came up to me, he's like, Chris, you need an LLC. I'm like, I don't even know what is an LLC. I mean, that's how dumb I was. I had no idea. There's caps on there for tax point of view and those types of things. And I think it's more of a question that when you sell to a qualified buyer, Nikita, that's where there's going to be some flags. But when you're selling it to an investor, it's a little bit different. It's handled differently. Usually investors already have the cash there. There's not these bank restrictions and and things of that nature. So, and again, that's another really good question that we'll be covering at that live event as well. Let's see. This is from Richard. It's an REI Pro question, I believe here. If you choose the quarterly plan and we change the annual before, yes, you can change your plan in REI Pro. Just do it before the end of the trial. Otherwise, you're going to look like you're a multiple account person. And as you know, I mean, you guys get it. There's a lot of people that try to set up multiple accounts and get it for free. And we do have systems in place, but do it before the trial. You can also call the office. They'll be more than happy to help you switch that over as well. And you'll see how the upgrades, downgrades work through the system. It's all done behind the scenes. Very simple to do. So let's see. As a beginner, how much to budget to advertise for your first property? You know, I think starting off, I don't really want to see people put a ton of money into marketing. I'd rather you put a ton of money into your education, because that education is going to teach you what you should or should not doing. And I see a lot of people, hey, let's just dump $500 into this, but you're not really sure why you're doing it. And that's where I see a lot of people get frustrated. It's becoming too expensive. It's really understanding, hey, obviously we have to find deals, and there's multiple ways of doing that, and some of those ways cost money. But if you're spending more than $500 a month just getting started, I'd probably try to keep it around there. But I want to, more importantly, I want to know where the $500 is going. You know, I would put that more in kind of a direct mail, but I want to make sure that I have the education and get the knowledge, because if you get people calling and you're not sure how to respond or answer that question, you're not going through the system, then you're going to blow $500. So, all right, just so everybody, there's multiple questions on the recording. Yes, it's going to be recorded. We will send out an email to with a link. It's also going to be put in the REI Pro Education Center as well. So if you go to the big education, we'll be adding that into REI Pro. You can go back and review this training as much as you want. And I encourage you guys to do this, because rarely do, I mean, just giving the amount of information in a very short period of time is already difficult for anybody to do. I just love doing this. It's a passion. I've really figured out a way to package it in a way so you can get started. Let's see. Scott, would it be easier if I were a real estate agent? This is a big question I get asked a lot. I can tell you I've never had my license, nor will I ever have my license. Just the simple fact that if you, let me say it this way, if you have a real estate license, no matter what state it is, you have to follow all the rules, regulations, the policies, the state that you're in. Me as an investor, I don't follow those rules, because it's really two different businesses. So no, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, you need to have a license to go do this. Now let's look at the flip side to this. If you have your license, obviously you have access to the MLS and a little bit more information from that point of view, but that will help you. But I wouldn't say that you have to go have a, go get a real estate license. I would say the exact opposite. But what happens if you get it and your spouse doesn't? Well, then that's perfect. One of you has it, one of you doesn't. And you can work together in building the business. So hopefully that helped. Katie, when are you going to do an event closer to New Jersey, Philly area? Actually, we may be coming to Philadelphia at some point next year. Is kind of been on the radar for us. I don't do a lot of events, and that's why I always encourage everyone. I know it's tough sometimes to travel, and that's why we really try to keep the cost. The cost of the event is a no-brainer for what we do. It's just timing and cost usually for people. We will be back on the East Coast, but we were actually looking at Philly. I just have a general rule of thumb. I never go north when it's cold. So usually I like to go somewhere warm. That's why we're going to LA. Let's see. Grady, how do you get through the challenge of being so new to estimating rehab costs, especially one thing I didn't know. I think just about everybody that's in real estate investing that's gone through it, has been successful, will always go back and tell you they didn't know either. But one thing you can do is, if you know of like a contractor, or hey, my brother brother's friend's electrician. I think if you take anybody like that, not only will you learn a lot from them, you'll start to build your power team as well. And they're going to give you a really good idea of what things are going to cost. I told you I went to Home Depot and I just started pricing out rooms. And I said, okay, when I walk in a bathroom, I've already totaled it up so my inspection time is cut in half now because I've already totaled up the basics. And that will help as well. But, don't let that scare you, though. And like I said, when we get to the offer stage, I'm going to add some buffers into the offer in case your analysis was figured out wrong. So don't get too tied up on that. Cheyenne, what's the best way to find buyers, the end buyer? That's going to be part 3. This is actually the easiest part. I know a lot of people, when they get started, the very first thing they're scared of is, where's the buyer coming from? And I get it, I was a little nervous that way, but I remember Jerry Reinsdorf, he told me this. He said, if you find a good deal, there always will be a buyer. And I've always had that philosophy. If I buy it right, now it's just a matter of how do I go find it. And I could tell you that very first property that I did a newspaper ad. In this case, we wouldn't do a newspaper ad today, but back then I did. I had so many investors call that I never had to advertise again for over 2 years because I built the list from the first ad. So I'm going to show you how to do that, but that's unfortunately it's going to be in series 3. So all right, let's get to the next one. Just hold on, so I'm just reading it. This is from Ricardo. Chris, when asking questions to the seller regarding whether they want to cash out or take payments, would taking payments give them more for their house than a quick cash out? Yes. If they're willing to take payments where I don't have to go get the cash, then now it's going to probably turn into a seller finance. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more to get it on what we call terms. It's just like if you think about anything that we buy, that we put a down payment, monthly payments, at the end of the day, we all pay more for it, right? So it's the same philosophy. If I can pay a little bit more for it, maybe give me time not to, or number one, if I pay a little bit more for it, I won't have to come up with that much more money to give to the bank as a down payment. Yeah, I'm paying a little bit more for it, but it's buying me time. And that's a little bit more valuable when we're buying. At the end of the day, it won't matter which way you buy it, but giving the seller options in general is great because who does that? Nobody does that. It's one way or the highway approach. So always do give them multiple just to see what they're open to. It also helps really figure out their motivation. Let's move on to the next one. All right, this is Hosea there in Florida. See, most of the forms require REI general form screen, but I don't see the purchase agreement in there. How can I get that? We actually do have it in REI Pro, and that's going to be, you guys still see that top screen here. Hold on one second. Let me pull it up for you. So, obviously, some people may not know where it's at. You go to Tools, go to Contracts, and it's going to be this contract to purchase. That's going to be the contract that we're actually going to go over, and also have a video there as well. The only one that we upsell is the lease option agreement. Just there's a lot to that, and that costs us a lot of money to go through that. But you're going to use the contract to purchase. I've used this for 18 years, that one contract, and it is the shortest version contract I've ever seen, and it works. So obviously, always take a contract to an attorney and make sure you're good to go. Each state is a little bit different. Obviously, it's going to be the little things that you need to do and put in there. Let's see. Tony, do I disclose to the seller that I will be signing the contract? No, you're going in saying, hey, I want to buy a house. That's your point. This is how I look at it. To the seller, who cares if you buy it or somebody else buys it if that's what we agreed to pay for it? And that's so you don't need to really have a conversation over that, because who knows, maybe you do end up buying it. Maybe you found an investor who want to fund it and do your first rehab. We just don't know, and things change. So you're going in there with the mindset that I'm buying the house. I have said to sellers, hey, I'm not actually going to be buying this. I'm going to be assigning. I've got an investor there. People are going two different ways. Either, well, I thought you were buying it, or they're like, I don't care as long as this is what I get by this date. So no, I don't normally have those conversations. Let's see. Ariel, what is more effective when starting out? Working with realtors to find deals or driving around? I say driving around. Yes, it's more time consuming, but you're finding deals that are not advertised. That's the beauty of driving around. And honestly, most realtors just don't understand how to do what we do. And I know this because they would be doing it. Okay, so you need to be driving around. That is by far, that's not even a beginner tip. That is what we do today, actually. So I love driving around. It's something that obviously today's a little bit different for me. I have people doing that for me. So, and it leads into bird dogs and having people find these for you, and especially people that don't have much time. Hey, have some bird dogs, some friends or some coworkers. Hey, if you're in the area and you find a vacant house, can you send me the address? I could pay a referral fee for it. Okay, so but driving around to me is going to be the best way to do it. Let's see, Ricardo again. Are uploaded pictures for a property going to be shared with everyone on REI Pro as well as new information? No, it's just your account and any users that you have, unless you are on the team account. If you're on our team account, then you can hide things from people, and so you don't see everybody, and you can impersonate. You can say this person has access to this area and this person doesn't, and so there's a lot of flexibility when you're on the team account, but just you and your users. We've been throwing around having a big community, but as well as I do and everybody else, as soon as you put a big community on there, someone's going to say something they shouldn't have said, and now it's going to be monitored. So this is really an internal. It's only people that are in your account. So if you're just on an individual account, you have 5 users, 5th one being you. Only those people would see that information. Let's see. Becky, what's up, Becky? I'm so glad you guys are on this. Heck yeah, you need to come out to LA for sure. Text me, call me next week, and let me know if you guys want to do that. We'll actually set up something really cool at the event, and those guys, everyone that's on here, would love to see you guys as well. So give me a call or text me next week, and I will get everything set up with you. Let's see. Alex, what happens if both spouses have their licenses? That's a great question. I would say one of you get rid of it, because you don't need both. And I always go back to this license thing is saying the average income for a realtor coast to coast is $24,000. The average income for an investor coast to coast is $106,000. It's a totally different business. There are things that you can't do when you're a licensed agent, but me as the investor, I can do everything. The difference is what you have access to. So you have access to an MLS. Now, where that would be really awesome is if you're in a non-disclosure state. So having access to that MLS will help you with comparables and contacts, relationships, things of that nature. But let's see. Ooh, I'm going to just try to get through a couple more. Unfortunately, there's a lot here, but let's see. Andrew, ever thinking of coming to Ohio? Yes, Ohio is one of those tricky states, though. That would probably be a really good state for me to be in, just to even go through some of the trickiness. And Maryland's the other one, especially when we're talking about Ohio's more wholesaling, Maryland's more pre-foreclosures and lease options. Let's see. Let's see. Greg, thanks for the compliment. He just said here, I looked at 3 other systems when I decided I would need to automate. REI Pro is by far the best system. We try to put in what REI Pro, what you need. We don't really like the shiny dangling objects things. I think that's so confusing, and really to simplify a software, there's so much stuff in REI Pro. It's just not intimidating. I think a lot are intimidating, but walking you through the steps is really the key to this business. If I could just give everyone a piece of advice there. Let's see, Andrew, what's the best way to find an attorney? Well, I could give you one really cool way. You could actually do this in REI Pro. If you go to step 9 in any property, we actually have over 15,000 title companies and attorneys listed in there. We may have your area. That would be a great place to start off with. Another way to find a really good real estate attorney is a real estate investment REIA club. They would know, because not all real estate attorneys are real good. I mean, there are times I literally am teaching the attorney because it's just not normal, some of the transactions that we do today. So you definitely need to find somebody really good to be on your side. So there's a few different ways to do that. All right, we're going to end it there. Almost going on 2 hours. We should do like a 4-hour presentation. That would be pretty cool. But yes, we're recording it. We'll get everything sent out to you. Those of you looking at the live event, highly encourage you, if you really want to get this thing off right, be there at the event. That will be a huge difference maker, I promise you. I will personally be there. People are shocked to see that I'm actually there. Yes, I do. Actually, I'm the only one that does it. So come meet us. Come be part of the family, especially if you're a REI Pro subscriber. We walk through REI Pro the entire time that we're there, of understanding how to use this strategy inside of REI Pro, and it really just simplifies everything. Just take 2 days out of your life to come really make a big difference for the rest of your life, and I promise you that. So anyways, everybody have a great day or a great evening, depending on where you're at. And I look forward to seeing you guys on part 2. We'll be sending out that information as well as putting it on your REI Pro dashboard, and look forward to seeing you then. So, and come out to the event. So everyone have a great night, great weekend, and look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks, guys.